Okay, just moving through to the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay is from our Twin Valleys vineyard, and the Twin Valleys vineyard is right up the other end of the valley. This is of the Wairau Valley, so this is much more at the western end. The western end, you're gaining elevation, you're moving up towards the ski fields, you're moving away from the sea, and so this is a cooler vineyard, which really works for Chardonnay because, you know, Chardonnay, Gewürztraminer and Pinot Noir are the early ripening varieties. So again, this is made very similarly to the Boundary Farm Sauvignon in that you really couldn't make wine any more sort of hands-off. So this one, again, all hand-picked from a particular clone of Chardonnay from clone 95. We just hand-pick it, it goes over the sorting table, we whole cluster press again with no additions, straight to barrel, and again all fermented in French oak with indigenous yeast or native yeast. And what we're really aiming at with this wine is we want to have, it's very easy to make fruity wines in Marlborough, and what we want to do is use that fruit character because of the growing conditions to give this extra weight on the palate, but we don't want it to be overt on the nose. We want to have something that's more complex, a little bit more savoury on the nose, but we certainly want to use that fruit on the palate. And what we're finding with these, we don't use a lot of malolactic fermentation, so we still want to retain the acidity, so it works with food, but what we're finding by doing that, it certainly helps with the aging. So we started with this vineyard in 2003, and the 03 and the 04 are drinking really well now. And so I think that clone 95, along with the way that we're making it, gives it a structured style that actually will age as well. Oh, I'm going to run out. Can you edit that? Okay, and that's the Chardonnay.
We don't edit anything.
Okay, and then we'll move on to the Gewürztraminer. Gewürztraminer, like an unbelievable variety, but one that obviously people struggle to say, and we can't make enough of it, but it's a variety that people don't understand. People don't ask for on wine lists because it's an intimidating atmosphere when you're looking at the wine list, and then you've got to say a word that you can't really say, and sommeliers make you feel like dicks, and so. But to me, it's a variety that works. And it's a horrible term, but it's a user-friendly variety. It's got a lot of flavour. It's got relatively low acidity, so it doesn't put off people who've got high acid. It goes with a whole range of foods. And so this is from the same vineyard. Again, because it's an early variety, it's got to come in. It's a really interesting variety because it comes in with very red skins. So you think of it as a white wine, but this one comes from 4 different clones of Gewürztraminer. And with the clones, they're quite different. It's like Pinot Noir has a lot of different mutations, and Gewürztraminer is the same. But the Pinot family in particular is genetically very unstable. And so, we'll walk down a row of Pinot and you'll see the mutations, and then what we're trying to do now is take off different cuttings for the small berry lots. But this one comes from 4 clones. 2 of them are slightly bigger, 2 of them are very small berry clones. We pick them separately. Again, they all go over the sorting table because they've got red colours on the skins. If you leave the juice sitting with the skins, you make the wines quite bitter or tannic. And this is why I think some people leave sugar with Gewürztraminer, whereas naturally Gewürztraminer is quite a low acid variety. So with ours, we hand pick it, we put it over the sorting table. Again, we don't use the press wine because the press wine would have pressed some of the tannins and the colour out of the skins. And then we put it into older French barrels, and also into tank around about 50-50. And again, it's all fermented with indigenous yeast that comes from the vineyard. Now with this one, we ferment it right through to dryness, so it's less than 3 grams of sugar. And for us, it's a wine that you can use with such a range of foods. It works with some desserts, like things like tartare or anything to do with fruit, but it's like unbelievable with Asian foods, curries, those sort of things. And so Gewürztraminer, for me, should be much more of a sort of a popular variety, but it's just, I think the name holds it back a little bit because it's an explosive wine, but with good texture. we didn't want to make an oily style, but something that still works with food. And now, and now going on to the Pinot Noir. So Pinot Noir is a real focus for us. We find with Pinot, it is a red variety that works in cooler areas. I think part of that is its thinner skins. And so, it's something that we're super passionate about at Mahi. We go through with these. This one comes from 3 vineyards. We go through, we crop it very low, around about 2.5 to 3 kilos of vine. We take off the wing bunches very early on. These are the sort of shoulder bunches, which flower a little bit later than the main bunch. Then we take those off, we then hand pick it all, goes over the sorting table, and it's the nicest time because what we try and do, we pick in the morning, we cool the fruit down, and then we put them over the sorting table later in the afternoon. And for me, as I said, we get, so many people apply for vintage, and then we get a good team of people in, and we're all standing on the sorting table. And it's sort of the nicest time of day because by then we try and sort late in the afternoon for the Pinots. The phone's stopped, and for me, like, vintage is the best excuse to move away from anything to do with administration. So what you're doing on the sorting table, you're surrounded by, let's say, 5 or 6 kids who are flowing in from all around the world doing exactly what they want to be doing, which is making wine. I'm Pat, myself and Matt, we're doing what we want to be doing, and it's just the best place. You talk about different things. At the winery we have a really good stereo over vintage, we have free beer, and so by that time, you're just you're sorting through, knowing what you're doing for the grapes, and just having a really nice time. So I love this time of the day. Then we sort the fruit, we de-stem it, we take it through a de-stem it. We're a little bit cooler than Dijon or Burgundy, and I do think some of our stems don't get fully ripe, so we de-stem. It just goes into small vats, like dairy vats and that sort of thing. We hand plunge, probably 3 or 4 times a day. Again, it's all fermented with the native yeast. And then after maybe about 2 to 2.5 to 3 weeks on skins, we just lift the tanks up. We run the wine to barrels, because French oak again, and it sits in there for about 10 months. We do a big blending session, so anything we don't like, obviously we sell off. But we put the blend together, use just an organic egg white to fine, and then bottle, and then probably hold it for 4 months before release. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Now, Brian, we've had the pleasure of meeting you a few times now. Love you to tell fellow wine lovers what got you to this vintage. Where'd you come from?
Yeah.
Where'd you get this passion?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for me. I mean, I just feel so...
Not to cut you off, but maybe an elevator pitch.
Oh, it's so short. Okay. So I was born in... No. So really for me, I travelled a lot in Europe when I was relatively young. Decided then that, okay, look, I think I'd go to university. Really got into drinking different wines when I was travelling around Europe. And then I went to university to do botany and really and got a job at a wine store, fell in love with it, wrote away to a lot of winemakers, and I will be forever grateful for a guy called Randy Weaver. He was the only one who wrote back. So for a couple of years while I was studying, I'd just do leaf plucking in the vineyard, and I really, really loved the whole concept of wine. There's the beautiful social side, I love the history, I love the science, everything about it I really enjoy. Then I worked in the Salador just for holidays, and then I studied at Roseworthy I worked in Bordeaux in '89, great vintage. I was about 4 at the time, and then and I did '89 in New Zealand, which was great as well. But then I studied at Roseworthy, which was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. And then since then, I've worked in a number of places. I've worked in Hungary, which was great. I've worked in probably 3 or 4 New Zealand wineries. Worked in France, worked in Australia, and so it's been a blast. But for me, I'm a relatively scruffy person, and so what I love about it is you can get covered in dust out in the vineyard. You can then get covered in juice in the winery, and we do everything. At our winery, everybody cleans the drains, everybody does that. And then to watch this sort of murky juice change to something that's for me, it's unbelievably beautiful. And then you do the blending stage, which is all sensual. The bottling's not as much fun, but anyway, you do the blending stage, you bottle it, and then you get to take it out, to the best restaurants in the world, and also just to talk to people about wine. So for me, it's a blast, man. Really, really enjoy it.
Cheers, Brian. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.
Cheers.